This is my 21st century literacy choice assignment, and I chose to do a digital story. And my digital story is a crash course on women's reproductive patterns, particularly women's mate choice and mate preferences. So, beginning with and directly relating to sexy Fight Club Brad Pitt, I'll begin talking about what women are looking for as far as traits go when searching for a potential mate. This perspective is an amalgamation of evolutionary biology, biological and evolutionary anthropology, evolutionary psychology, and behavioral ecology. And I will admit I'm a bit biased when it comes to this perspective of human behavior. My thesis work looked at women's context related mating patterns in terms of life history theory. So, this perspective that I'm showing of women's reproductive behavior, although at deeper levels begins to incorporate sociocultural factors, at this level is heavily rooted in evolutionary theory. So right off the bat, we need to make a clarification between two commonly used terms. Most often these terms are thought to be synonymous, but they're not. There's a slight difference between the two, and it's mate choice and mate preference. Mate preferences are what women's ideal traits and characteristics would be in a potential mate. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is who she partners with. Most women would agree that Tom Hardy sitting here with his shirt off petting a dog is encompasses all the preferences they have in a potential mate. However, this is where mate choice comes in. Mate choice is who they actually choose to mate with. Although they have a preference for traits similar to those of Tom Hardy here petting a dog, but due to high demands and low supply of men of Tom Hardy's caliber, among other reasons, women can't always attain what they prefer. So, what they prefer may not always be what they end up choosing. So, instead of Tom Hardy, they end up with this guy on the couch. That's the difference between mate preferences and mate choices. Preferences is the ideal characteristics a woman looks for in a mate, choices who they actually choose. Now, when talking about mate choices, when selecting a mate, a woman chooses between either obtaining direct or indirect benefits from that mate. Direct benefits are things that the female receives directly to herself, like resources and protection, as symbolized by the monkey with the gun. Indirect benefits are things that benefit the woman's offspring, but not the woman directly. Things like good genes and high immunocompetence are indirect benefits that the woman receives from mate choice. But all this asks the question, what makes women the ones who make the most reproductive decisions and much more choosier when it comes to selecting a mate than men are? Like almost all animal species, the answer lies in which sex invests the most into the production of offspring, to which sex is the cost of reproducing the highest. Like all males, men only need to contribute sperm to the reproductive equation in order to have offspring. Sperm is energetically inexpensive to create and it's reproduced really, really quickly. So it's in very, very high supply, but incredibly low demand. Women, however, develop eggs, which are much more energetically expensive to produce and also have a limited supply. Once impregnated, they also have to deal with a 9-month internal gestation period that is an additional cost on top of the production of the gametes. And in addition to both producing larger sized gametes and having an internal gestation period of 9 months, women also have a lactational period after giving birth to children that can last anywhere between 6 months to 5 years depending on the culture. So, in a cost benefit analysis, illustrated here by smoking, it is much more costly for women to have children than it is for men. It is women's higher level of obligate investment into reproduction that makes them the more discerning and choosy sex when it comes to mating. I like to say that women are the limiting reagent of sex. So now the question is, what are some of the traits and qualities that women are looking for when selecting a potential mate? Here's a laundry list of qualities that females have been known to seek out when searching for a potential partner. I have a friend orangutan down here because he actually possesses many of the traits listed here. Human females' mate preferences are not very different from those of females of other species. Majority of females' mate preferences can be roughly put into 3 different categories. A preference for signals that reliably indicate genetic quality. A preference for mates with resources or access to resources, although a complete dick, Mr. Trump here definitely has the resources to raise a child. And preferences that relate to parenting qualities, because women invest heavily into reproduction, they also prefer men who invest too, much more than just sperm. But how do women tell if men possess these qualities, especially when some, like genetic quality, cannot be seen with the naked eye? The answer is that they have to rely on traits that reliably or honestly signal that a man actually possesses this preferred quality. Physical attractiveness and masculinized traits, things like jawline, bilateral symmetry, and muscles, all indicate high genetic quality. Individuals that possess these traits reliably signal that their genes are of superior quality. 1999 D'Angelo here is definitely signaling that he has high genetic quality. He might not make the best father, he might not have the most access to resources, however, he will sire offspring who are of high genetic quality, which is an indirect benefit to the mother. In the human world, having culturally relevant, valuable items is a sign of resources, a reliable sign of resources. You can't fake having a nice car. You have to have the resources that make you able to buy it. So, it becomes an honest signal of resource availability. This guy right here, he might not be much to look at, but he has the money and resources to buy this nice car. So, he obviously also has the money and resources to support raising a child. So, all men can lactate, or have the capacity to lactate, but majority of them don't, like our friend here does. So, women need other signals that reliably indicate that a man will be a quality parent and who will invest in collaborative raising the offspring. So, things like being good with kids and kindness, these behavioral traits related to raising children become attractive and sought after. So, as I'm getting to the end of this crash course on women's reproductive patterns and behaviors, I kind of want to say I'm sorry. This view of behavior takes away a bit of the mysticism of human mating and relationships and whatnot. And it puts a very blunt view that seems kind of deterministic on human reproduction. However, there are many factors that make mating and reproductive a highly variable and individualized behavior. A woman's mate preferences and choices fluctuate based on the woman's condition and relative mate value on the mating market. Women like Megan Fox here are of a different condition and value on the mating market than women like charming Helga here. One may expect them to share mate preferences, but mate choice would be expected to be very different between the two individuals, solely based on their condition and their value on the mating market. A woman's reproductive patterns, preferences, and choices also fluctuate based on where a woman is at in her life history. The mating preferences and choices of a 21-year-old with no children are very different from those of a 39-year-old with no children. Okay, so we're finally at the end of my digital story slash lecture, and this was all just a little snippet of the current behavioral research that is being conducted right now on women's mating behaviors. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you sitting through this entire thing. This is my first time I've ever done anything like this, and I hope it was interesting, entertaining, and maybe you learned something. See you in class, Dr. Shea. Peace.